Welcome, welcome everyone to our amazing evening tonight, our Optimal Health Community Time podcast. Let's talk. We are so excited that you are joining us. It is amazing to see where you're coming from across this beautiful world. And my name is Jan Paxman. I am from American Fork, Utah. And I'm so honored to be on tonight with Health Pros Live. It's our special edition that comes every fourth Monday of the month. And I'm a registered nurse, and I'm so excited to welcome our guests this evening. We have some amazing people that are going to be sharing amazing information with you. And you'll want to make sure that you notice down in the bottom of the screen, there is a Q&A feature. We'd love for you to share your questions live there. We'll also be watching the chat, but it helps if I can just keep an eye on that Q&A, and we'll be feeding as many questions as we can get through tonight. So just get ready to rock and roll because it's going to be amazing. It's Heart Health Month. It's a beautiful time to celebrate that amazing organ that just beats on in our chest every day and keeps us going. And both Megan and I got the memo for the heart health color. Dr. Joe's a little bit on the green side tonight. He may not be feeling quite up to it, but we're so glad he's here too. So let me introduce you to these two. They are amazing people. Dr. Joe Pecoraro, I've known him for many, many years. I've been around for 16 years as a certified metabolic Optavia coach, and I know he's been around longer than I have. He was here when I got here, so I'm so happy to introduce you to him. He is a vascular and general surgeon. He's a fellow of the American College of Surgeons. He's married to beautiful Rhonda, and they have two children, a daughter and a son, and he has a granddaughter that he is smitten with. And so excited to have him here. Dr. Joe, welcome.
Well, thanks so much, Jan. And yeah, this is June will be 21 years since Rhonda and I got on the program. So that is we started in 2005. Probably some people on here were just either born or they were little kids in grade school by at that point.
Well, you age backwards, my friend. So it's so great to have you here. And Megan, so happy to have you here as well. You and Dr. Joe just um, complement each other so much with your training. Megan is a doctor of nurse practice, and she's a board certified family nurse practitioner trained in cardiology. So they have a lot of the same kinds of training, and I know it's going to be amazing to have them both here tonight. Dr. Joe, I think you're from Texas. Are you not in Texas right now?
Yeah, we live in Texas now.
Correct.
Not
And
from Texas, but we've been around and now we're located in Texas. Yes.
fantastic. And Megan hails from Arizona. So we're so happy she's here with us. Megan is married with a beautiful 11-year-old daughter. And she and her husband, you saw all the life that they live. Like they live it out, full out, all the time. They're going, doing so many wonderful, fun things. She's aged backwards too. It's amazing to hear their stories. But we're going to kick it off tonight, and it's going to be so fun. I wanted to talk to them first of all about the focus on metabolic health as we enter this new Optavia 3.0 or 3.0 era. And we're so focused on the health from the inside out. And as we have really focused in on learning about the metrics behind this, the number on the scale, and getting into either our in-body scales or DEXA scans or Renpho scales and seeing those numbers behind that number. One of those numbers is visceral fat. Now, visceral fat, I think pretty much everyone understands there's a difference between subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. Subcu fat is the fat you can pinch that's between your skin and your muscle wall, and the other fat is inside your abdominal cavity, and it can do some real damage in there if we're not careful and not understanding. So it can impact the heart. And I'd love to throw it over, first of all, to these two to talk about. Let's start with Dr. Joe. What does visceral fat, what can it do to the heart and what problems can it cause. And then we'll shift it over to Megan, and by then we'll have some questions rolling and we'll get going. So, Dr. Joe.
Yeah, I think if we think about the visceral fat, Jan, a lot of people kind of think of it as just the big belly. Um, but I can tell you when you're operating on a person, there's, as you say, there's the subcutaneous fat, there's the visceral fat, which is on the inside. And visceral fat, which includes not just the fat around the organs, but something which is called the omentum. And the omentum is kind of like the policeman of the abdomen. It goes wherever there's inflammation, it goes there. But we've always considered it as just sort of there to protect the internal organs, when in fact it itself acts as a hormonal metabolic organ.
Mm.
And so what it does is it helps regulate so many of these things. And the heart itself, I mean, people don't realize that even the heart can get fat around it. I mean, when you operate on someone, it's not just the fat from the skin down to the muscle. When you open up an abdomen or you open up a chest, the more fat there is, the more complicated it is mechanically to do surgery, not just from a metabolic standpoint, but from a metabolic standpoint, it's just one of those things that really it's it doesn't it's not prejudice against anyone. In other words, it's just doing its job. And it does its job in response to what we put into our bodies, and to how our bodies respond depends upon the level of health they're in. So
Mm.
as we move away from the visceral fat, what we start doing is we start more or less leveling out a muddy pond, so to speak, where it gets to a level of clarity that is completely different and much easier to handle every physiologic function that we have.
Mm. So good. Yep. Okay, Megan, take it away from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest eye opener for me with the visceral fat is, just to reflect, this is the stuff in and around the organ. So it does include the fat in the liver and everything. But like Dr. Joe mentioned, it is a metabolically active endocrine organ. It doesn't just sit there when it's visceral fat in and around our organs. It's not like the stuff here on our backside that just kind of sits there. It is metabolically active all day long. It's sending out inflammatory cytokines and causing inflammation and kind of wreaking havoc throughout the body, affecting all of those organs in that metabolic dysfunction, which I love that description of the symphony, where the music just isn't sounding right. It's not, the instruments aren't playing together in harmony like they should. And so the visceral fat just has a really big impact on that. And by increasing inflammation, inflammation is the root of most all chronic disease, but particularly cardiovascular disease. When we get that inflammation in the blood vessels, that's when the fatty plaque and the cholesterol can start to go into the lining of the blood vessels and start to cause that hardening and that plaque buildup.
Mm.
So we want to keep inflammation as low as possible, and reducing visceral fat to a healthy level is a great way to do that.
Okay, that is amazing. Yep. And we know that our programs can target visceral fat, and we can reduce visceral fat by 14% in 16 weeks. That is something we can claim with our programs with Optavia that is pretty powerful. And I've seen it with my clients who are tracking that now. It's awesome to see that number coming down, and they have some control over their overall health and well-being. I love that. So, okay, let's move on. I know, Megan, you answered Deborah Kingery about the fish oil with Eliquist. So hopefully I can see that that was answered. So I hope she can see that. So then we've got Cinda asks, what can you do to increase your protein level, the metabolic scale number, when you are on 5-in-1 with EAAs? I don't know exactly what you would say, but I would say that you're getting a pretty good amount when you're on the 5-in-1 with the AAs. But if you guys have any other suggestions.
Yeah, well, what I would say is this, Jan, is the 5-in-1 is a framework that we start from. And typically, while we know that almost everyone gets excellent results on it, the person who's 5'1" and weighs 110 pounds that needs to lose 15 pounds is different than the person that's 6'9" and needs to lose 150 or 200 pounds. So I think the first question is, how much protein do you need? And how much protein are you getting with the 5-in-1? Because we know with the 5-in-1, most people are getting enough protein to preserve their muscle and to burn the fat. Now, if you're asking about increasing your protein levels so that you can grow muscle mass, then you may need some additional protein. And we have the whey protein. There are other ways of getting it, but really check with your health coach on that because they know you better than we do, Cinda.
Yeah. And I think Cinda might have also been talking about on some metabolic scales, there is this vague area that's just titled protein, like body protein in weight. And I'm not sure how that would differ from skeletal muscle mass on a scale like that, on a metabolic scale, but that would be my thought. Cinda would be increasing skeletal muscle mass, and I would think that the protein would go up that way.
Well, and it probably also includes cardiac and visceral muscle in there.
Yeah.
But now also
Right.
bear in mind, Cinda, that when a person loses fat, the percentage number of their protein will go up. Because if you weigh, for instance, 200 pounds, and it shows that your protein, your fat percentage is say 50%, you've got 100 pounds of fat, and then you've got a certain amount of muscle. If you lose 50 pounds of fat, now you're a smaller person. So if you maintain that same amount of muscle, the percentage of muscle is going to be much higher. So don't get too worked up over the number until you get to your goal. And then you can start going from what we call reset, renew to refine. And these are all different issues that you can work with your coach because sometimes it will take a little bit of refinement from the 5-in-1 depending upon the individual.
Right, right. So good. Cinda also asks, what can we do to kick back that metabolic age? And what I know about that is it takes weight. If you get into your weight resistance and you work on building muscle, that's really going to help to reverse that metabolic age. You can lose a lot of fat, but until you start toning and building muscle, that metabolic age isn't going to reverse as easily. Is that what you guys would agree with?
Yeah, and I would also say don't get so worked up on that number because that number is kind of randomly something that they've chosen based upon estimates. So remember, you're a person, you're not all those numbers mean something, but each number doesn't necessarily mean everything.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. So we've got some really great questions and time's a ticking. So let's say Suzanne asks, talk about hemoglobin A1C level, desired level, and cardiac health, and how Optavia programs may facilitate heart health.
I'll hop right in for that one. So the hemoglobin A1C, this is a blood test that is like a 3-month average of what the blood sugar has been doing in the body. And a healthy level for that is less than 5.7%. And I lost the rest of the question there that I couldn't see it. But the hemoglobin A1C is really important when it comes to heart health because this is the measure of when it's elevated, then we get into this pre-diabetes state or type 2 diabetes. So it's a measure of insulin resistance and how well our body can process sugar and other carbohydrates. One important thing to know is that having type 2 diabetes is actually risk equivalent to already having heart disease. So from a medical management standpoint, the recommendations for someone with type 2 diabetes are the same as somebody with established heart disease. So if that tells you just how important it is to keep that blood sugar balanced, the Optavia programs and plans do such a phenomenal job with that. That's the main reason that I started coaching about 6 years ago. I didn't realize how much at that point the program was going to help me in my own health. But I couldn't find anything to help my patients get their blood sugar and their hemoglobin A1C improved or lose weight until I did find Optavia and the 5-in-1 plan with the Habits of Health. So I would say it's very important, and I'll toss the question to Dr. Joe to add anything else.
Yeah, I would just say that the A1C level, remember, is when that's high, what that is that's like a warning light on the dashboard. In and of itself, A1C is just a number, but what it's doing is it's alerting us to the fact that the blood sugar is getting to a point where it can be dangerous. And diabetes, a lot of people don't realize diabetes affects every organ in the body. It affects the eyes, it affects the taste, it affects all of the blood vessels. It affects the heart, the kidneys, the circulation. So do not take diabetes lightly, because if you can control it, which you can with our program, then please take it very seriously. Even type 1 diabetics do well with our program, which is something that I don't think anyone can really say.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I've seen people be able to decrease the amount of insulin that they require, and they feel so much better when they're eating properly and following a good structured plan. It is amazing. So fantastic. Okay, so we've got another question here by Denise, and she asks, is it better to do cardio at a very high heart rate, 180, because cortisol might rise with a higher heart rate, or is it better to keep the heart rate lower, like 140 beats per minute, while doing a cardio exercise?
You want to start that one, Megan?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's great to vary the exercise that you're doing, to go to a point where you're working so hard that you can still talk, but it's difficult to hold a full conversation. That's a good level to look for with cardio, regardless of where your heart rate is with that, because we all have a different heart rate response to exercise. But I think within one workout regimen, to even go to have some higher intensity intervals and then back it down a little bit for a little bit more of a moving recovery can be a great technique with cardio in general.
Great. Awesome. Anything else, Dr. Joe? Are we good to go?
Let's move on to the next one, I think.
Okay. All right. Here's one for you, Dr. Joe. When are heart palpitations harmless, and when should we pay attention? Jennifer says she has them periodically when they just feel like a little skip or something, and I do too, actually. And and she says she's asked her doctor, and they said, oh, it was just fine, but she still wonders.
Okay, so a palpitation, which is when you feel your heart kind of pitter pat, can be so many different things. So, if you get on the treadmill and you get your heart rate up to 180, you might feel palpitations. Well, that's okay. If you drink too much coffee and you haven't had sleep, you might have palpitations. By the same token, there are a lot of conditions that will cause a person to have palpitations, specific electrocardiac conditions. So for instance, sometimes people might feel that they skip a beat because they have a premature ventricular contraction. May mean nothing, may mean something. So to really say when is a palpitation dangerous and when is it okay, it really depends on your cardiac workup. For instance, a lot of women have mitral valve prolapse, where they might occasionally feel palpitations, and it might mean nothing. But it is real important. don't mess with the heart. Get it checked out because you don't know if it's if that's the warning sign for something or if it's just like what Jan was saying, the occasional extra beat, the occasional missed beat. Um, I would say don't make assumptions based on what we say because we haven't looked at all your echocardiogram, your EKG. You might need a Holter monitor. Who knows? Depends on your age, your family history, so many different things.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, and in general, I would say, if they're starting to happen more frequently or they're lasting longer or you're having long runs of these episodes, certainly don't wait to get them checked out. If it's just a little blip every now and again, focus on hydration, reducing caffeine and stress, and getting good sleep. But I agree with Dr. Joe. Definitely go get it checked out. It's easy enough these days to get that looked at.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, so some really quick ones. I think this might have been answered. Joe asks about the roles of various forms of exercise in the heart, HIIT, exercise, lifting, endurance, cardio. You spoke to it a little bit with the heart rate question, but just having a variety of different things is great for the heart. Is there anything else we'd like to add there?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, Jan, when we were talking about it before, is balance. Get some balance. In other words, don't do all aerobic cardio stuff and ignore resistance exercises. Those are very important for people at every age, really, to maintain their muscle, to grow muscle, to keep their metabolic rate up. For women also to be sure so that they keep their bone densities up. So balance is in general a good rule of thumb for most everything.
Great. Okay. Next, we have a question from Mary. She's having surgery. She's been immobile in bed, needing to have a tibia fracture repaired with a metal, not a mental, a metal rod. And she has been asked to reduce her weight by 260 pounds. She's lost 203 so far, but her injured leg is significantly larger than the other leg. And she's concerned that is the extra fat on that leg going to cause there to be a problem with the surgery.
Well, they wanted you to lose a certain amount of weight for a number of different reasons. And one of them is that it'll make the surgery easier. Um, I would say this first of all is I've assisted on a lot of knee replacements, and most of the people who are getting knee replacements are overweight. So it's likely that your doctor, your orthopedic surgeon, is used to operating on people who have some level of overweight, but they want you to lose the weight because it'll be easier to do the surgery. Your recovery will be easier. Hey, congratulations on the 203 pounds already. And the reason why the leg with the fracture is a little bit bigger than the other might even be more than just fat. It might be that the lymphatic return, the other part of the circulation, not the arteries or the veins, that it's just not draining well because of the fracture. But some of these things will be corrected once you have the surgery. It's likely. And also be sure to talk with your coach because depending on the type of surgery you're having, you don't want to be on the 5 and 1 throughout that pre-operative, operative, and post-operative time frame.
Right. She'll require more support for that recovery. So that's great. Thank you, Dr. Joe. We have one from Becky. She says, I'm wondering about the amount of water. I know we say 64 ounces, but then she's heard 100 ounces is good. But if she weighs 107 pounds, what should she be drinking?
I think the recommendations on healthy hydration have always been, and I think Dr. A even says this in the Habits of Health book, he chooses 64 ounces. It's just kind of a common, 8 ounce glasses, common recommendation there. we know that there's just a few, very limited number of people that have to actually be very cautious about their water intake, and those would be people with heart failure. So if you have that issue, I'm sure that you are aware of that with your provider. But otherwise, in general, or like end stage kidney disease, I guess would be another state there. But in general, most of us can drink plenty of water, and as long as we're eating good nutrition along with it and we're not sweating profusely, we shouldn't have to worry too much about drinking too much water. Um, but 80 to 100 ounces I've seen work so well for people working towards weight loss. So that's another metric that I use. And then I think we've heard to them say like half of your body weight in ounces of water. That's another metric. Again, this is all about developing healthy habits and patterns in your life. So, as Dr. Joe mentioned earlier, it's not the one number that's so important, but it's the pattern of being well hydrated in your life, drinking mostly water, not having the sugary beverages, and just knowing that a good amount of hydration, what feels good in your body, will be so healthy for all of the organs and all the systems in your body.
Yeah, I think I think what Becky's concern is 64 too much for her because she only weighs 107 pounds. Because and the recommendation you often hear half your body weight, it's not half your body weight, it's the number of pounds you weigh, take half of that number and drink that many ounces, which I think
Right.
is where they come up with the number of 64, because used to be everything in medicine was based on the average weight of a person, because in those days it was a 150-pound person. And so what would be roughly 70 kilograms or 70 ounces, they, I think, rounded it down to 64. But, really what Megan is saying is that make sure you're hydrated enough. If your kidneys are working, you'll be fine, but don't don't drown yourself either. If you feel like, gee, somebody's telling me to drink 80 or 100 ounces and I weigh only 107 pounds, find that balance for your body. I mean, if you're drinking 100 ounces of water and you weigh 107 pounds, you don't need to get additional exercise probably because you're going to the bathroom all the time. So understand that, there's balance. There's balance in that, just as we've been talking all along. And and use common sense, because most people, especially if you're on this program, you've probably gotten in tune to your body a little bit more, and you'll know. Just understand though that when you're thirsty, that means that you're probably more dehydrated than you need to be.
Awesome. Okay, gosh, we're down to 1 minute. There are a few questions left. I'm so sad we aren't going to be able to answer those, but come next time, we'll try to remember them and get them answered for you next month. But you guys, thank you so much for the fantastic questions, and for Dr. Joe and Megan, thank you so much for the fantastic answers. And just as we wrap up tonight, I just want to draw attention for any who are up in the Tigard area in Oregon. There is going to be a metabolic reset event. So if you're in the area in general, come. It's on March 7th. It is going to be an amazing display of leaders sharing amazing outcomes that happen when people focus in on metabolic health and wellness, and the community will be there. It will be a wonderful day. So if you can join, please do. You can take a screenshot, hover over that QR code right there, and get registered. So
the registration
so
link is in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you to the man behind the curtain. Thank you, Chris. Awesome. All right. And then please, if you haven't already, go ahead and go into your podcast and subscribe to our Let's Talk podcast and on YouTube. We're so excited. We have both platforms going. We want you to never miss an episode of what we have with Let's Talk. It is so wonderful to join together and go over these things that help us create lifelong transformation. So next week, we have heard you. Many of you have shared with us that you feel a little trepidatious when it comes to what happens after the reset. What happens when I reach my goals? How am I going to sustain this for a lifetime? So we're now going to provide for you the first Monday of every month. We're going to talk about life beyond the reset and give you real ideas, real structure to how to live this way for the rest of our lives. And so please join us next week. It'll be amazing for Let's Talk. And again, thank you all for joining us tonight. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll see you next time on Let's Talk. Good night.